Welcome to R1 and 3 Autoethnography. This episode is a little more personal, and it's just something I wanted to do after I listened to the self-compassion episode again, because I thought that I kind of missed some stuff. Like, I wanted to emphasize why self-compassion is especially important to me, and I hope that either you can relate to this or, I don't know, find something in my story that's helpful for you. So I gotta say the disclaimer again, which is I'm not a medical professional, and you should talk to your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. I would also encourage you to look into the resources for this episode because there's some really interesting reads. But anyway, and I'm probably going to make a blog post about this episode too, so check that out on our website. And this is a really hard episode for me to record, so yeah, again, it's solo because this is a personal thing. It's really personal. So here we go, I guess. So I'm Steven. You probably know that. I mentioned it before, but my father passed away before I was born. And growing up, Mom was angry. She was really angry. And I don't really talk about, or I don't really want to talk about what she did when she was angry, but you can probably figure that out. And she was sad. She was really sad. So she was kind of, well, she wasn't really emotionally distant per se, but I guess in a way she was emotionally unavailable because she was dealing with this absence of love. And that affected my development. I was doing some research for the next episode, and I came across this concept, object constancy, which is basically being able to maintain an emotional bond with others, even when there's distance, like physical distance or not talking to them for a bit, and conflicts. I found out that develops when you're younger, and it's affected by trauma, abuse, and other things. So I think growing up, I lacked object constancy, and that made having friends, relationships really difficult. It's still something that I struggle with, you know. In terms of my life, the one thing that I still can't figure it out is friendships and relationships. But anyway, I watched her grow up angry. She's all I had because, like I said, Dad wasn't around. And what I saw, what I perceived wasn't love persevering, but the absence of love and what it did to my mom. So I never felt like my problems were real. I never felt like I could have gone to her, because she was dealing with so much. And she was busy. Because she was working at the restaurant beside our house as a waitress since Dad was gone. And it was just, yeah. I still remember seeing her lie in bed all day. Or I I remember how frustrated she would be when she got home from work and a lot of other things, but I'm not going to go into that. After after I was in that prime age of childhood development, I went to preschool, and one of my most vivid memories was well, first of all, my preschool teacher saying I had ants in my pants because ADHD. But Father's Day, we would make crafts in school on Father's Day. And the first time someone asked me why I wasn't doing, why I wasn't making something, I replied because I guess I didn't know any better, or it wasn't a big deal to me because by the time I was 5, I had already accepted that he was gone. Well, I didn't accept it, but I knew he was gone. And the look on the teacher's face when I said he wasn't around, he was dead, right? It was kind of miserable because she felt bad for me and she just didn't know how to reply. So I felt uncomfortable talking about it, especially to adults. Because what do you tell a 5-year-old when their parents are gone? I'm not sure. There's probably things some people probably know, but I learned that wasn't normal. I learned really quickly that I was different. And my story was different because when all the other kids would talk about their parents on Father's Day, I had nothing. And I knew I was different. I always knew that I was different because even if it wasn't for some of the stuff that happened when I was a kid, it was the fact that I'm Chinese and I went to this school in a small town, so I stood out, and I didn't know it obviously, but ADHD and anxiety. So yeah. Moving on from that, I saw that, well, I knew I was different, and Father's Day was really painful. All holidays are still kind of painful for me, but just because they're reminders of, yeah. But moving on from there, I really knew I was different, you know, because I even remember in grade 2, I couldn't talk like the other kids. I couldn't talk to the other kids because they just, it's like I didn't know what they were talking about. That's probably got to do with information recall and ADHD, but I was also anxious. I was afraid what they were gonna think of me, and with this whole object constancy thing, I was afraid. I had this huge fear of abandonment because I don't think I ever felt secure in that relationship with my mom. I trust her now, but not before. So I remember this one conversation with my classmate. It was weird. All my conversations with my classmates, I just felt weird because all the other kids just talked so fluently and related to each other. They could talk about so many things, and I didn't know. And that's what I mean when I say I feel like people know something that I don't, because it's like, what are they talking about? Or from the perspective of someone who's never always been different, it's like, I just don't know. And it's painful, you know? That's why I can say, so I was 5 years old, and I already had to deal with my mom's anger, and just wondering why I couldn't be like the other kids. And that made it hard. But I was 5 years old. I was supposed to be a kid. And I wanted to go to my mom about it, but you know, she was sad and angry. I understood that she was coping with the death of my dad, so I told myself it wasn't hard. I don't think I had anyone to go to anyway. I saw how adults reacted when I told them about dad, so what if I told them how different I felt? I don't know. And it's not like I could have told the other kids either, because they're normal, you know? And that fear of abandonment just made it so difficult to open up. I don't think I ever did until I was a lot older, but I felt different. I've always felt different because of my ADHD, because of my anxiety. I couldn't be like these other kids, and I tried to act like them, because deep down, I just kept telling myself that it's normal. I'm normal, you know? Because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like the other kids. I didn't want to deal with any of this. I'm 5 years old. I didn't want to be different. So, and I'm 5 years old. So, who am I going to go to when I don't have dad and mom's coping? I just wanted to be a kid. And I think I missed out on a big part of that, because I just had to deal with it, you know? I was so different that I was isolated, you know, and I always felt isolated, because when you compound that fear of abandonment and that fear that people aren't close when they're not around, it's a terrible equation. So I was so alone. I felt so alone. And just continuing to grow up like that. Of course, I learned how to interact with my classmates a little bit. I was still different. As we grew up, it kind of got worse. My thoughts got worse. And I just wanted to be a kid. But I knew I couldn't have that. So I spent a lot of time alone. I made good friends with Lego and my imagination, because my head was kind of a safe space for a little bit, you know. I could think of these stories when I'm playing with toys. I could relate to some of the characters I made. I could feel a little less alone. But I just wanted to fit in. As I grew older, Father's Day always came around, because it does. And that same look, that same anxiety feeling that I get when teachers ask me where my dad was, I told them, and no one knew what to do. And I'm not saying they had to, but I wish someone did. And who was I gonna tell? I had a hard time already making friends. And I had a hard time already thinking that they'd stay around. When all you wanted to talk about was Dr. Seuss or Batman. But I was thinking about why my mom stays in bed all day. And I was thinking about what it would be like to have a dad when they could talk about what they're going to be doing on Father's Day. And when holidays came around, Mom tried her best to make them special for us. And she did what she did. She did. But it was still there. That longing, first of all, feeling like I belong to something, missing out on that normal life, childhood. And my dad, I would always cry during holidays. Not during the day, but at night. Because I didn't want my life anymore. I didn't want to be me. I so desperately wanted to be somebody else. Because if I was anybody else, I could have fit in. You know? And that continued until I was a teenager. I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff. That continued until I was a teenager. So, obviously there's that whole puberty thing and all your hormones messing with your emotions, but I have been feeling so much pain since I was born. And didn't really help all these feelings from puberty, the emotions, if you will. And I guess that was the time that was like, it was kind of more important to have friends, because that's when you start relating to your peers a little more. And I was scared. I was so scared of getting close to people, talking to people. Because one part of it was anxiety. And another part of it was probably this object constancy, fear of abandonment, you know? And I think that I just didn't know how to be like the other kids, the other teens, I guess. So, we got a computer when I was 5 or 6. I forgot to mention that. And I fell in love with it. I still love computers and technology, but, you know, there was just so much I could do with it. And when I was on my computer playing games or doing anything, it was like an escape. I loved that I could get away from being me. I loved that I didn't have to live in this reality, you know? I could get out of my head. That used to be a safe space. And more on this later, but I started dating this girl online. And she was kind of a safe space, you know, because I think she was the first person I opened to about a lot of this stuff. And You know what I did with that? This intense fear of abandonment, of rejection. I just wanted to cling onto it, to her. Because for the first time in my life, I felt like someone understood me. Like I could talk to them. So I think she got the brunt end of a lot of my emotional trauma. And I was so afraid that that whole relationship just quickly devolved. I don't think it was self-sabotage. It was just me trying to hold on too hard because I became really controlling. And yeah, you can laugh at that being 13 years old, but I mean, I was terrible. I was really terrible. And she was gone after a little bit. So I felt alone, you know? Because I don't know. I started lifting weights when I was 13, and that was cool because that was another way to kind of escape, get my anger out. But I remember Mom and I used to fight a lot, and that was after I think I started arguing back after I was like 10 or 11, but we fought a lot. And I remember one fight in particular, it got really bad. And I went to my room and I was already emotionally distraught from puberty and other things. I just didn't want to be me anymore. I didn't want to. I wanted an escape, you know? I wanted to be someone else. I say that a lot, but it was especially important in this time because I felt so alone, and I felt alone all of my life. So I started writing out sorries to the people that love me, and I was gonna end it, and I wasn't gonna do it really clean. This is gonna be graphic, so turn it off if you don't want to listen to this anymore. I was planning on just slitting my throat, because for some reason I really thought that I deserved to suffer. And part of that was me saying that I was 5, I was 13. I shouldn't have these bad feelings because my mom's actually dealing with something and I'm not. Pretending. I thought I was pretending. But for some reason I didn't do it. Didn't go through with it because, I don't know. I guess I thought there was more. I'm happy now that I didn't, but I guess I had my first friend when I was 14 or 15, but I started drinking when I was 13. Not every day, but I liked that it was something else that could take me away from everything. If you can't tell, I always just wanted to escape. But had my first friend when I was 14 or 15. But it was surface level, you know, and that was comforting because I believed that I could just be normal, you know? I could pretend that none of these feelings exist. I could pretend that I'm not different. I could pretend that I'm not depressed or anxious or anything like that. I could pretend to be normal and just keep things on the surface, you know? Never open up because who's gonna listen? Who's gonna understand me? I don't know. So that's all it was. Just a friendship on the surface, and I was okay with that. I'm still okay with it. But like I said, friendships and relationships are one thing that I still don't know how to navigate. So I kept that philosophy of just pretending to be normal. And I started acting like the other kids. I was like, this is cool. I don't have to be me anymore. I can pretend to be someone else. And it worked for me when I was with other people, I guess, but I couldn't get out of my head. I could never get away from the negative thoughts that I would put in my own head for being different, for feeling in general. Because I felt guilty. Guilty that I was someone else. I felt guilty that I couldn't make friends being myself. And that my mom was still suffering, and I couldn't do anything about it. And I never told any of my friends that. This is probably all new to a lot of people if they're listening to it, but I don't know. I just don't want to be like that anymore. I don't want to be someone I'm not, and if people can't relate to me, I don't know if that's bad. You know, because I'd rather be me now. But for so long, I didn't. And now I had my first friend. And it was great. And we hung out a lot. And that's not saying that I didn't really have acquaintances or friends when I was younger, because I sort of did. Like, I got invited to some birthday parties and all that stuff, but I never saw them outside of school, so I never really considered them friends, I suppose. So, yeah, it was cool, and after acting like someone else, I felt comfort. And drinking, I felt comfort. Started smoking when I was 16 too. Because whatever way I could escape me, my past, my family, I welcomed it. Because I knew that no one would understand. So instead of trying to get to people to understand, I could just forget about it, distract myself, and I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. But there was always nighttime, and the thoughts always came back. So I couldn't do anything. I was still powerless and miserable. The only time I felt like I was in control is when I was drunk or high. And even then, I wasn't in control. So, after I graduated, I came to university, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about my first year in another episode, because, yeah, there's a lot of substance abuse and stuff. So that's a whole other episode. But after years of feeling alone and a fear of abandonment, not being able to relate to people with my genuine self, I still can't figure out friends, relationships. And sometimes I still do feel alone, but it's hard, you know. With mental illness too, it's just another roadblock to navigate. Anxiety, ADHD, and bipolar type 2, they all present unique challenges that I have to deal with. And I guess a lot of people don't know that it's every day. You know, the stuff that we talk on this, or the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, kind of happens every day. And in that second episode, when I talked about cutting people off, it's not because I'm a narcissist or something. Me pushing people away gives me control, because instead of them leaving, it's me. And that's a coping mechanism. A lot of this stuff I'm working on in counseling, but a lot of people don't know that long-winded explanation of me growing up, and that's okay. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I left out too that I can't remember, but so you're probably wondering why I'm sharing this with you now. Well, I don't know. I think that a lot of people aren't going to be able to relate to my story. I think that's okay. I hope that whoever's listening to this, you feel like you're supported and you're in the right place in your life. But if you're not, if you kind of always feel alone, then I don't know if many people can relate to my story, but I know there's a lot of people out there that have unique experiences like mine. And if you're listening to this and you still have a lot of stuff that you need to work through, I guess I'm just trying to tell you that it's okay. Not in a dismissive way, but not in a way of resilience either. We didn't really choose our situation, and we didn't really choose anything, really. But the way that I deal with loneliness now, and the way that I get affirmation, I guess, or support, is through myself. And part of that is because I'm still afraid of my friends. I'm afraid that they're not going to be around. And if there's a conflict, then I get really, really scared. But I do have close friends that I can talk to now, which is great. But this is the tie-in to self-compassion here. That loving yourself is the most important thing. Like I said last episode, no one's going to save you. And it took me a while to realize that, honestly. But self-compassion, it's love that you give yourself. Because for me, I don't know where else I would find it. Because I don't know how to accept it from other people quite yet. But even if I did, I think it's more important that I can be there for myself. Because at the end of the day, I know that it's my journey that I'm still in right now. I don't know a lot, and I'm really young, 20 years old. But I guess I've been through some things. And it's funny because ever since I started this whole journey, and at the point that I'm at right now, I feel like my life is just starting. Because now I can kind of talk to people. I can be someone without acting, you know? I guess this whole episode is maybe another part of that journey. Sharing how it was hard for me and how I deal with that. Because I know life is hard and it's so painful sometimes. I know. But we keep going, you know? And when you do it for yourself, I think that's when you start feeling like you're really living, as sappy as that is. Because for so long I wasn't myself, and that was terrible. But now I can say that I'm at the point where I'm happy with who I am. I'm comfortable with myself, and holidays are still terrible, but I don't have to get out of my head. I don't need an escape anymore. I'm sober. And I guess if you're on your own mental health journey, I don't really want to tell you that it's going to get better, because I can't guarantee that. But hey, you're doing it. And I'm proud of you. Because maybe no one knows about what you're struggling with. And that's okay. You don't have to tell anybody. It's okay. Because maybe you're just fighting something in your head, you know? Something that you can't shake off. And I'm telling you, that's okay. Because I know that life can be hard. I know that everyone's struggling with something. But I know that I made it through some of the most challenging parts of my life. And I did it for myself. Because I love myself. And again, that's where self-compassion comes in, because, you know, it's hard. It's really hard being me sometimes. I'm not trying to play victim either, but I'm sure that you can relate to this. There's times in your life where you want an escape. You don't want to be you. But you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Again, I can't say it'll get easier, but you're learning. And I'm learning too. Again, I'm 20. I act like I have a lot of life experience, but I don't know. I think that we're all gonna be okay. And I hope that you might find some value in my story or my appreciation for self-compassion, because I use it as my primary source of motivation, caring, coping, everything, basically. Because even now, sometimes I feel like it's just me. But that's not true. And sometimes mental illnesses can just make you feel alone. But I guess just please be more caring to yourself. Consider it. You know, acknowledge your bad days, your bad feelings, because I didn't do that for so long. Wreaked havoc on me. And hell, if you're listening to this and you're young, like my age or younger, you know, what you're feeling is real. I think I didn't get help because I thought that a 13-year-old wouldn't be suicidal. And even younger, I didn't think a 5-year-old could be depressed. But maybe things will get better. I hope so. I think that's everything on my mind. Again, I'm probably going to do a blog post with all the references and stuff because there was a lot of research that I stumbled on that inspired me to do this episode. So if you listen to it for this long, holy shit. Thank you, I guess. So yeah, I think that's that.